So today we're going to turn all of you into Zoom power users. And to do that, hopefully you'll have loads of questions. If you have a look down below, you'll see that there's a chat button. Some people have already started to get chatty. So please jump on in and stop me at any point and ask a question. We do have a dedicated Q&A at the end for about 15 minutes. But honestly, if I'm saying something and you have a question, I want you to jump in and ask away. I'm going to jump between sharing my screen and sharing the video. As a hot tip for you, when you share your screen, you kind of lose your audience. And so many of us would have been at a presentation before and experienced death by PowerPoint up when somebody's presenting on stage. Well, when you're on Zoom, death by PowerPoint is the only thing people see because your video disappears into a tiny little window. And so I tend to only use PowerPoint or sharing screen very selectively, and the rest of the time you get to see my face. So let me show you what we're going to do today. First of all, you would have seen my intro slide. This is what we're going to cover today. I'm first of all going to talk about when you're attending meetings and also when you're hosting them, how to both look your best and to sound your best on video. So presenting on video is a little bit challenging for many of us. So I'm going to walk through how you can make your Zoom video performance a lot better. And then thirdly, I'm going to go through the nitty-gritty of hosting a meeting. So I'm going to open up my Zoom, share how I would schedule a meeting, and also show you some of the controls that I specifically turn on to make the meetings a little bit more functional. Now, if you've come here today with a burning question, I would love to know it. So down the bottom, click on the chat and say something to me that you would like to know today, just so I have a bit of a feel for where everyone's at. Every person is at a different level, and we've already seen in the chat that Noreen has only started using Zoom last week, and Jolly just jumped off a Zoom meeting, and so I was a bit confused about why we don't have a video option today. So I can't see any of you, and that's because right now we're hosting a Zoom webinar, not a Zoom meeting. Already we've got some things coming in. So Noreen's asking how do I place the slide up and have me next to it, and Susan's saying she can't see the other participants' chat. In the webinar situation, the chat is a little bit different. You'll see that there's a drop down just at the top of the chat panel, and there's two options. You can either chat to just me as a panelist, or you can chat to all attendees. And so the chat messages I'm getting in are coming just to the panelists. So because you're not a panelist, you don't get to see them all. So that's why. So I'm going to jump right into the first section, look your best. And as you put those chat questions in there, I will keep reading them and I'll incorporate them into what I'm saying, but please keep them coming. I think one of the most difficult things about Zoom is actually reading the chat and being able to speak at the same time without any strange, awkward pauses. So as a Zoom presenter, this is definitely a skill that you need to get used to. I think the closest equivalent is perhaps texting somebody while still maintaining eye contact with your husband at a restaurant and pretending like you're not texting them. It's really similar to that. You need to hold the conversation as if nothing's happening. Now, in my case, I have two monitors. So I'm looking at you with one monitor and I've got the chat over there. So you'll be able to see every time I read it because my eyes will dart off into the distance. And looking your best on Zoom, it's really important to consider where you have things placed on your screen because people will be able to tell those tiniest little things about how you're presenting. So what can you do to look your best? First and the most important thing is figuring out where, at the moment in our house, where we should sit. And it's important for a few reasons. One is where is your light? So ideally, you will have windows in front of you, giving your face a lot of light. And when you're on Zoom meetings where you can see everyone's video, you'll notice that this is a big issue. Most people have their face completely in darkness and you can't really see them. In my case, I'm fairly lucky because I'm in a room where I have a window in front of me and a window beside me. So I've got quite a lot of light in this room and it really helps. But in addition to that, I also have a lamp straight on my face. Let me show you. So the lamp can be controlled, and you can see that it makes quite a difference. I can also change the color. So there's a daytime and a nighttime setting, and maybe a romance setting too. So I think a lamp like this is actually really useful. This one's one that a friend gave to me. I'm going to pop into the chat a link to where you can buy one. I have a little bit of a kit I've put together. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the website before, kit.co. But in the kit are the 3 different things that I use commonly for online meetings. And the first one is the lamp. It's a tiny little ring light. It sits on top of my monitor. It just clips on, and it's got arms so you can move it around. And in my case, this particular window gives me a lot of morning sunlight. So I need to move the lamp over this side to break up the shadow that's caused by the sunlight. So the ring light's really useful. I think it's about 30 bucks on Amazon. So it's really cheap, really easy. It plugs into USB port and has lots of controls. So that's my hot tip for lighting. Secondly, where's your camera? Lots of us are using a camera which is connected to our laptop. So it's a little tiny dark pin camera that sits at the top of our laptop. Some unfortunate people have it sitting at the bottom of their laptop and it looks up their nose. Those cameras are definitely not the best. Now, when I use the camera on my laptop, I have to move it up so that the camera's at eye level. And that's really the best spot for it. So you can see here, I'm looking straight into the camera. And if I could see all your faces, I would be looking straight at you. So you get the impression that I'm looking straight at you. It's a fairly common technique that's used on TV presenting as well, is you want someone looking almost straight into the camera. So my laptop is raised up on about 7 different books to get it to this point. I recently invested in a webcam though, and it's dramatically improved the quality of my video. So what it does is it transmits at a higher frame rate, and it's also taking a higher quality shot. I'm not sure the last time you cleaned your laptop, but if you are using your laptop video, it might be time to get out a tissue and give it a little bit of a rub and just clean it up, because they do get really, really dusty, and then that affects how you transmit. Now I can see in the chat, we've already got a couple of comments around lighting and it being an issue, and those kinds of comments in there. So Noreen, this particular lamp is just called a clip-on ring light. It's a fairly generic one. It doesn't even have a brand. You could just use a lamp. So if you've got a good lamp that you can kind of position towards your face, then that's one that you could try first to see if it looks okay. Most lamps tend to be on the warm side, so more like that romance kind of lighting. And ideally you want to get towards the whiter, the cooler kind of lighting that mimics some sunlight. Also, with my webcam, I've put that in that kit link as well. So if you click on that and have a look at it, the one I'm using is a Logitech one. I think we bought it from Officeworks, so they're fairly readily available. However, I have discovered when we tried to buy another one for one of our workmates recently that webcams are a little hard to get hold of at the moment, probably because so many people are on Zoom meetings and they want them as well. So I think you may have a little bit of trouble getting one. Perhaps stocks have been fixed now since it's a month in. A little question from earlier. I'm just going to cover a couple of the questions that have come in. Maylene has asked if you can do a webinar and a meeting on the free Zoom package, and that's no. In fact, you can't do a webinar on the paid Zoom package either. It's a paid upgrade on top of a paid account. So that is something to consider. I don't love this format. I think it's a little one-dimensional because I don't get to see anyone, and I can't feel, I can't feel the normal interaction. I'm not going to be covering the webinar format today, though. It's not something that most people have access to, so I'm going to just cover the meeting format. That's how most people would use Zoom. It's certainly how most people have it already set up. If you've got a free account, that's what you'll be using, is the Zoom meeting format. All right. back to where we are now. Paul has asked, why do we use the web format? Well, can you clarify, what do you mean by the web format? Give me a few more details in there. And Susan said, I'm not sure what a webcam is. I have a camera already on my laptop. Susan, if you've already got a camera, that's fine. Use the one that's on your laptop. A webcam is a second camera that you plug in. So it's a USB plug usually. And the reason why you might get one is just to up the ante on how you look. So a webcam will give people a much higher quality picture. So if you're doing meetings just with maybe your teammates, it's not really an issue. But if you're doing some presentations and more high stakes kinds of meetings, then that's the reason why you might get a webcam, just to take it up a notch. Cheryl's asked, how is Zoom different from Skype? And the major difference I have found is that Zoom meetings handle a lot of video at the same time very well. And my experiences with Skype is not the same. Once you add a few video streams into the mix, Skype seems to struggle with the quality, whereas Zoom is quite consistent with the quality and allows pretty good transmission of both voice and our faces. So I think that part is why I would use Zoom over Skype. Zoom's free. I think Skype's free as well, but perhaps I feel like Zoom might be a much better technology compared to Skype, because you don't have to go through a lot of the rigmarole with your Microsoft account. So if you haven't logged into your Skype recently, it can be a big pain in the bum because Microsoft has changed the way they do accounts. All right, back to looking our best now. A couple of things that you might have seen, and certainly I've seen this twice this week, is I've seen 2 nude people in the background behind people. I'm not even kidding. So you might need to have a think about whereabouts in the house you're going to sit with comparison to how the rest of the house is using that space. So the first one, I saw somebody's nude teenage son walk past them behind them, and they were sitting in the kitchen. So the teenager's just going to get something out of the fridge for lunch. And secondly, the other one was somebody's husband walked into the room, into the office while they were on camera. So I am deliberately up against a wall. And that's just because the traffic in my household is sometimes interesting and varied, and I don't want it on my camera. I think especially if you're homeschooling your kids at the moment, and even with your best intentions, to put a sign on the door and say, hey, I'm on a meeting right now, it's really important, I'm going to be on video, don't come in, you will still get traffic come on in. And so that's the reason why I have my back up against the wall, is to prevent any of that unwanted traffic. Perhaps you have also been lucky enough to see some nude people on Zoom this week. I already had 2, maybe next week I'll have more. A feature of Zoom you may have seen is what's called the virtual background. And so, we've just got a question about that. Dot has just added that it's so common to have odd backgrounds. And sometimes you might have seen ones where there's a palm tree swaying the breeze, or maybe the Golden Gate Bridge, or all sorts of things behind people. Now, this is a feature of Zoom that's on the video settings menu. I'll show you the menu tools in a little bit, but for now, I just want to say that I strongly recommend you don't use virtual backgrounds. There's a couple of reasons. How it works is Zoom will identify where you are as a person, and it will try to figure out what is behind you and take that out and put a pre-picture of something in its place. It doesn't really do a great job of this. It might get it right initially, but as you move, people will see your shoulder disappear or your ears get lopped off, and it's really distracting for your attendees. So I would say it's best just not to use a virtual background, even if you've got a very good one. I have seen a couple of good ones. So people will put maybe their logo or something behind them, and it does look great, but you will find the background is so much brighter than the person. And so again, you've got this jarring awkwardness between what's behind you and what's in front of you. I can see a couple of people have said, yeah, virtual backgrounds definitely don't work for me. Only half the image appears. And Karen, I'm with you on that. For some reason, Zoom takes out my teeth And so the virtual backgrounds always look awful over me. So try not to use virtual backgrounds. They also do take a bit of the grunt away from the presentation as well. So I have noticed that my computer will be a bit slower when I'm using a virtual background. And in fact, Zoom has some minimum requirements over being able to use them. So for that reason, I think just ignore them. You can get what's called a green screen, and Natasha's just written something right about that, a green sheet behind you, and it works a bit better. And that's true. If you're into video, you would already have a green screen, but I definitely wouldn't go out and buy one just for the purposes of having a virtual background on Zoom. You can actually get pretty cool ones that clip onto the back of your chair. And if you want to know a little bit about a green screen, basically what it does is it creates a neutral background that something can be overlaid on. You might remember a couple of weeks ago when the Queen delivered her national address on TV, she had a green dress on. Lots of people have used that as a green screen and replaced her dress with all sorts of things. So a green background is definitely good for image replacement or being naughty. Now, my last thing to tell you about in looking your best, and this is mostly for the ladies, is when you present on video, you look washed out, a bit more overweight, and definitely not your best. So this is why TV presenters get quite a substantial face of makeup before they go on video or on TV. And this is why anyone who's ever been in theatre before will know the first thing they put on you is this product called Pancake to even out your skin tone. In Zoom, you don't need Pancake. It has a little setting called Touch Up Your Appearance. You won't be able to access it in today's meeting, but on the video settings menu, there's a little tick box that says Touch Up My Appearance, and that will give you a lovely sheen. Your skin tone will look perhaps better than ever. But in addition to that, you might want to add a bit of makeup. And the reason I do it is because just the outline of my lips, my eyes, my facial expression will be a lot more dramatic than it would otherwise. And so you can see me a bit better and interpret me a bit better. I do the same when I present on stage as well. So if you've got a presentation that's a bit more high stakes on Zoom, or you just want to up the ante a little bit, just add a little dose of makeup, which we are totally not doing while we're in home isolation. Now, in the chat down below, is there any questions about looking your best that I might not have already covered? So if you've got a question, now is a good time to pop them down in the chat and I will answer them. And while we do that, I'm just going to share the summary. So these are the things we just covered. So that is angle your camera so it's at your eye level and that you can look into it easily while you're presenting. Buy a webcam if you want to increase the quality. Face your windows. Don't have the windows behind you because they'll be very bright and you'll be really dark. Add a face light, a lamp or one of those ring lights that I mentioned. Have simple decor behind you if you can. Don't use virtual backgrounds. Be careful of the people, the traffic that might come in behind, and add some makeup. And fellas, maybe you could do your mustache. That's maybe the makeup equivalent. So now we're going to talk about sounding your best. And this one is a big kettle of fish. Basically, the easiest way for you to sound your best is to have a good microphone. Most people who are using Zoom are just using the microphone that comes with their laptop and also the speakers that come out of their laptop. And that's okay. People can hear you. It's not too bad. But if you want to increase the quality of that, what you should do is look to having an external microphone. Now, what I mean by that is you probably have a set of headphones that came with your phone. That is better than the inbuilt microphone that you have with your laptop. So you just plug them in, have them in your ears, and use the microphone that's with that headset. That will be a lot better quality than what you're using already. Susan's just asked if we'll have access to this recording, and I think the answer is yes. I believe that Agata keeps a copy of all of our recordings, so Agata's online today, so she'll probably jump in right now and say, yes, everyone gets a copy, but I'm pretty sure we keep a copy and you'll be able to have a copy of that as well, Susan. So the next level of having a microphone is to use a headset. So for most Zooms, I use these ones. And so you can see that the microphone comes in really close to my mouth, and these are noise cancelling as well, and they're also wired. And so the reason why I use this is there are a couple of reasons why. Is number one, I can block out the sound around me with the noise cancelling headphones. Number two, it picks up my voice really, really well because I'm so close to it. And number three, I have a set of Bluetooth headphones, these ones, which I prefer because they're wireless, but I've had amazingly bad interference with our Wi-Fi here at home over Bluetooth. So if you also have had some strange things happen with your Bluetooth, then use these ones. Now, back in that kit that I shared a little bit earlier, I've got the Bluetooth version of these, which are the ones that I've had trouble with my Wi-Fi. I've recently discovered it's actually my Wi-Fi router's issue, not the Bluetooth headphones, but it's interesting to know that they both have this work on the same channel and it can be a problem. And so I like to have this because I know as soon as I use those headphones, I'm not going to have a problem. And I've got them next to me. In case these ones fail, I'll just plug them in and start using them straight away. So I think they're just the next level. Again, you can hear really well and you also can speak really well and be understood. We have a question here from Lisa, if I have any recommendations for external microphones if you wanted to buy one. Now, Lisa, this is a really expensive question you're asking because microphones range from just a small amount to a very large amount. If you wanted to just get an external microphone, the one that I use is called a Yeti. It's by a company called Blue, and it's very large and looks quite dramatic on your desk, and it's fantastic because it's got really good pickup. Now, it's also awful because it's got really good pickup. It means that you have to increase your environment soundproofing so that it doesn't pick up so much and be really granular with the microphone gain and just know a little bit more about how microphones work to get the best out of it. Something like this, the microphone in these will do a lot of that heavy lifting for you and figure out a lot of those issues. So you won't have to adjust its gain and figure out, oh, is it picking up too much stuff around you? It will just figure that out. But if you want to move to a more pro-level solution, then the Blue Yeti is amazing and it looks kind of rude on your desk as well, so it gets lots and lots of comments. Laura, you're asking me about my headphones. Are they plugged into the computer in order to use them? So in this one's case, yes, the cable is there. I hate being tethered to my laptop though with my cables. I absolutely adore my AirPods for my phone for that reason, that I don't have a cable. And so I really find this quite a regression back to the old days where I have it plugged into my computer, and I much prefer a Bluetooth solution like the ones I've got on today. And the sound will definitely be better because the microphone is closer to you. Like in my case, I'm arm's length away from my laptop, and so that's how far the microphone has to pick up if it's trying to pick me up from the inbuilt microphone. Whereas this one, it's only just next to me here, so it doesn't have as far to pick up. Robin, yes, those headphones can be used with a desktop. In the case of the Bluetooth ones, and honestly, most Bluetooth headphones now will easily move between both your phone, your tablet, and your desktop. They're really good across all of those spaces. Teresa, the brand of these ones, I'm actually using a brand new technology called bone conducting headphones. So I don't know if you can see, but these are not in my ears. They sit on the outside of my ears, and so they're vibrating for me to be able to hear, and they're called aftershocks. So I'll post these in the chat a little bit later if you're interested in them, but they're a next level tech. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going out to these. No problem, Laurie, that's why I'm here. So yeah, please ask all the crazy questions. Now, when you enter a meeting, you ideally should stay muted. And the reason is because all sorts of background noise will happen behind you, and it will likely be outside of your control. Another reason is when you're in a meeting, Mostly by default, people have what's called speaker's view turned on, and that means the person whose audio is transmitting is quite big. And so if there's someone talking and then someone else has a dog barking in the background, briefly their video comes on and then it goes back to the speaker again, and it's really crazy distracting. So I would definitely stay muted as an attendee, but you need to be ready to unmute yourself if you need to participate. There's a couple of tricks to this. So if you wanted to unmute yourself quickly, you can actually press the space bar on your keyboard and keep it held down, and that will unmute you. Or you can go over to the mute button, which I'll show you in a second. I have a screenshot of the controls so you can have a look at these. Noreen, these crazy new bone conducting headphones, which I accidentally keep calling bone crunching headphones, are about $250. So they are fairly expensive, but they're honestly amazing, especially if you have weird shaped ears and buds don't fit in. So my partner has weird shaped ears and buds always fall out on him. And so that's why we actually bought these to test out to see if they're any good. You can only buy these online. So we bought these from Amazon and had them delivered. There's no Australian stockists, unfortunately. Now, finally, in this section around sounding your best, I have a really interesting technology to share with you. I'm just going to go find the link and I'm going to pop it in the chat for you. It's a technology which cancels out your background noise. So it's a little program like an app that you install onto your computer, and then it listens out for any background noise that might happen through your microphone. And it's really useful if you were presenting on a day like this, like I'm doing today, and you might have your dog suddenly starts barking because posties are coming to your home now, and the dogs don't really like the posties. So if you have random background noise, maybe kids screaming, air conditioner goes off, all those sorts of things, what Crisp does is it listens for background noise and it removes it when it happens, and it won't get transmitted across Zoom. So if you know your household's already a bit of an issue for background noise, then definitely download Crisp. It's free. You just download it and install it and follow the instructions. It installs as an audio driver on your computer, and then you swap to it as a microphone control. So it's really cool, and it's definitely been getting a workout while Zoom's become so prominent. Now, I just want to finish off this section by giving you the overview of the things we just covered. Is try a headset for better quality sound. If you do use a headset, especially the ones with your phone, be careful of movement. For the ladies, dangly earrings seem to be a problem. It does interrupt your microphone transmission, so the microphone will hear the dangles and transmit that as well as your voice. Make sure you test your sound before you start. Zoom has an option where you can test your speakers and your microphone. If you were here in the first 10 people at the beginning of this session, you would have heard me testing my microphone and my speakers out. Stay muted for most of the time unless you have to speak, and try Crisp. That's the link in the chat. All right, now we're going to move on to hosting a meeting. And I'm going to keep the screen up for just a little bit. I'm sorry, my video's just got really small because I have a couple of things to show you. And first of all, it's a screen capture of what it looks like when you're on a call as an attendee. So I took this screenshot this morning. I was attending a meeting, and so you can see there, really big is the PowerPoint slide, and really small is the person who's speaking. Down the bottom, the controls are fairly classic. Most of you would have seen these before. On the left, the most important one, your mute button, and the video start or stop button. Next to these buttons, you'll see there's a little up arrow, a little caret, and underneath there are all sorts of different controls. The first one you should know is underneath the microphone one. That's where you test your sound. So you click on it and click test speakers and test microphone, and it will just give you some instructions to test those things. Underneath that menu also is a big list of all the different audio things that you might like to connect. So if you've got a couple of different microphones, if you've got a couple of different speakers, they will be on that menu to choose between. So if you have trouble hearing, so let's say I've got my Bluetooth headphones on, but actually my normal wired headphones are the ones that Zoom's picked up, then that's where I would swap over to the Bluetooth ones in there. Stop video, underneath there are the video settings I mentioned to tick to touch up your appearance. As a general rule, I think most people should keep their video on when they're in a meeting. Now, I've seen conflicting reports of this, and mainly the conflicting reports are around the quality of your internet, and transmitting video takes a fair bit of your bandwidth, which is true. But if your internet's okay, it is so much more enjoyable to have a meeting when a lot of people can be seen. Now, otherwise, it's a bit like presenting to people who are falling to sleep in real life, which is really quite challenging. I've got a couple of questions here, so I'm just going to jump into the questions and have a peek. Sharon's noticed that in some webinars, there's a delay between the voiceover and the person speaking, and is wondering why that is. Is it internet? Is it hardware quality? Yeah, what could it be? It's usually internet. I have, however, seen that somebody who their Mac was overheating, it was happening to them as well. So I've seen it happen to both those things. I guess the best thing is keep the room cool, make sure your hardware's okay. Ideally, you'd be using a fairly new laptop if you're going to be hosting Zoom meetings, and make sure your internet is of good quality, which is often really hard when all the kids are playing Xbox. Jolly's asked if we can have a play with a Zoom meeting without being in a meeting and have a look around. Yes, you absolutely can. What I did to learn initially was I would just create a meeting, set it up, and do it with my partner, get him to join on his phone in another room so I could have a feel for how all the controls worked. And then I'd swap with him so I could see what the controls were like for a participant as well. I think the best way to do it is 5 o'clock Friday drinks. Get a group of people together that you like, maybe some clients, maybe some friends, and have a glass of wine and just shoot the breeze, so to speak. That's a really good way to test out Zoom. All right, so down the bottom, the other controls you can see there: participants, chat, share screen, record, and reactions. For mostly, as a participant, the only one you'll really use a lot is the chat. And I think the chat is a really important part to keeping the meeting lively, because it allows people to essentially pass notes to each other while someone is speaking. And then when someone stops speaking, they can see the positive interactions that people have been having with each other. So I think you should try to use chat more, even if it's just a comment on the points that come up as they go along. Susan's asked why can't she see her mute button? And that's because right now we're in the webinar format and you don't get the option to speak. So that's why you don't have a mute button, because you technically can't speak. So you will only see it on a Zoom meeting, not on a Zoom webinar. Now, if you stop the video, what will it show? That's a really good question, Laurie. And what it will show is your profile photo that you've uploaded into the Zoom website. I'll show you in a bit where to change that, but I think it's a good idea that you have a good photo in there for when you do want to stop the video. All right, on we go. This next slide, now that's me. I took this just a few minutes before we started the meeting. This is what it looks like to host a meeting. So you can see down the bottom, some controls are the same, but you've got a whole bunch of new ones. So mute, stop video, they're identical whether you're a participant or an attendee. So don't worry about those. Chat, same, also identical. One of the most useful buttons here is manage participants. And the reason why I think this is the most useful is because when you click on it, you get a big list of all the attendees and you can see who is muted and who is unmuted. And if somebody has a dog barking in the background, the first thing you want to do is mute them as fast as possible. And so this allows you to do that really quickly. When I'm hosting a meeting, usually what I would do is keep the chat panel open and the Manage Participants panel open, and I'll constantly be looking at those for people who want to talk or issues with microphones. Also, if you have a particularly interactive meeting and some people are quite new to Zoom, they'll have trouble unmuting themselves. They just won't know where to look to find the button. And so if you've got that Manage Participants screen open, you can jump in there and unmute them, and just makes the meeting flow a little bit more smoothly, because Zoom meetings certainly can be quite awkward with those kinds of housekeeping things. A fairly new button, if you haven't used Zoom for a little bit, is the one on the left that says security. When you click that, you've got a few options around locking the meeting, allowing people to share their screen as participants, and some other things as well. I think you should just be familiar with this and have a think. Is your meeting one that's likely to have some security problems? I'll go into that in a little bit. And then record, breakout rooms, and reactions. Record's the same as a participant or as a host. Reactions allow people, that's a new button too, to do like an emoji clap, and it comes over the top of the video. And breakout rooms are when you can grab a group of participants and put them over into a separate room. This is a feature that you actually must turn on in your settings before you get that button. So if you go into Zoom and you don't have that setting, it's probably because you haven't got it turned on, or you've got a free account. It's not available with the free account either. And so it's really useful for when you might have, say, a larger group of people. How I've used breakout rooms before is if we're doing training and we have a plenary session where everyone attends, and then people have opted to go with different presenters at the same time. So they all go into various breakout rooms, and then at the end of those sessions, they come back into the main room. So it's very useful for trying to mimic what is a more traditional style in the way meetings typically are. Now I'm going to stop the share, come back to my actual video now, not the screenshot of my video, and cover a couple of these questions that have just come in. And so Gina's asked about the chat button. This is a webinar, so there are two options, panelists and attendees. In a normal Zoom meeting, what you'll see is everyone and then all of the participants' names. Now, as a host, you can change the way people use chat. So you can make it so everyone actually can't chat to individual people. They can only chat to the hosts and the co-hosts. So you can lock down the way chat works. But the short answer to your question, Gina, is yes, because this is a webinar, you only see panelists and attendees instead of all of the people's names. So you can't send any private messages in this style. Lisa and someone else has also asked about the security button, if it's new or if it's only on the paid version. It is brand new. So you might have seen a couple of weeks ago, the FBI released a statement about, oh, Zoom's very unsafe. Their statement actually was Zoom and other video meeting technologies have some security problems. And so really quickly, Zoom put out a new release to combat what the FBI had said. And so that's when that security button appeared. So you might have to just download the latest version. I believe it's on the free and the paid version. It's just you have to download the latest version of the software to get it. Zoom should incidentally prompt you to download that when you open it, by the way. So yeah, if you haven't updated your Zoom, jump onto the Zoom website, download the latest, and you'll probably get that security button. If you don't, please let me know. I'm fairly certain it's on both the paid and free versions, because it was something that they specifically did to combat a fair bit of negative media attention they got. Ephraim's asked about the visitor introductions. Are they automatic, or does the host have to create them? How long do they stay on, and would attendees have to fill them out real time? I'm not actually sure what you mean by the visitor introductions. I haven't seen that feature before. Ephraim, it might be called something else. If you want to clarify what that is, please pop that into the chat, and I'll have a crack at answering that one too. Marky's asked if she's curious about the sound. Does she need an external mic? Marky, the answer is definitely no. You can just use the mic that comes with your laptop, just it might be dubious quality. So you may want to consider an external mic to improve the quality of your sound. All right. Okay, I understand what you mean. The first screen that I showed at the beginning of hosting this meeting, Ephraim, now I know what you mean by visitor introductions. That is actually just a PowerPoint slide. So I showed that right at the beginning while I was getting all of my things ready, turned off my video, just had that bright. It's actually something that Business Station recommends we do as presenters, and I think it's a great idea when participants are allowed to enter the Zoom meeting before it's actually starting, before the starting time. That's a really good way of showing, hey, we're all in the right place. All right, now we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty of setting up a meeting. So hold tight, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a different screen. I'm going to share with you my live internet now. Hold on just a sec. Hold on there. All right, can you tell me right in your right in the chat if you can see Zoom on your screen, or if you can see my big smiling face? Woohoo! Okay, excellent. Thank you, everyone. So when you log into your Zoom account on the website, this is where you go by default. On the left-hand side, you'll see this is your menu, and what you want to do is schedule a meeting. So you can just host a meeting straight away. So that's up in the top right corner, host a meeting, but I tend to schedule all of my meetings, and I'll show you why. Now, I will just say while this is loading that I have a paid account. So a couple of my controls are a little bit different to what you'll see on a free account. First and foremost, what is the topic of your Zoom? And this will be transmitted to anyone you invite. So it's important that you say something that means something to both parties rather than something just for you. So in my case, I might write meeting with Nicky and Joanna for website. So something like that. Make it meaningful to both of you. This meeting description is optional. Where it's really important is if you have multiple people who you share your Zoom account with, this will give them a bit more clarity about what this meeting is about. It doesn't get transmitted in the invite at all. Now, when it's going to be, this is in US date format, which drives me nuts. I can never really remember which number comes first, so I don't bother trying to remember. I just click on the little calendar and set the date there and don't worry about typing in. What time it's going to be? Now, this is the time that's in your time zone down here. So if the other person is in a different time zone, don't worry about that because Zoom will help them with that down the track. So you just do it in your time zone. So let's say we're going to have it at 2:30. It's going to be 1 hour. Now, a little word of warning, if you have a free account, you don't actually get to have a 1 hour meeting. They're only 45 minutes. Zoom, when you first host a couple of meetings, they'll give you a little free time extension and said, hey, we've just added 10 minutes onto the meeting for you, so you can keep going. But if you want to host meetings that are longer than that for multiple people, then you will have to buy a paid account. I believe the time restriction doesn't happen if you have fewer than 3 participants. So 1, 2, and 3 people attending, it allows you to go unlimited. And I can see in the comments that if you have an education account, you can also keep going. So that time limit only applies to meetings of 4 people or more. Let me tell you how this is really useful. Is if you happen to be on maybe a couple of committees like I am, and sometimes those not-for-profit committees are very chatty and you want to get the business done and get out of there, a free Zoom account is really useful because you can say, hey guys, we've only got 45 minutes right now and then the meeting's going to end, so we need to get through all of our business for this month quickly. So it actually can be a blessing in disguise. So set how long it's going to be. If you have something that's going to recur often, you can tick this button and say how often it's going to recur. The registration part here, this is the part that you won't have on a free account, but it's so useful. So the Zoom registration creates a form that you can share with people. They have to put in their name and their address, their email address. And how it's really useful is, number one, you can see how many people are going to come to this meeting. And number two, it adds an extra layer of security because every attendee gets their own unique link to the meeting. So they have to attend on that link, otherwise they can't get in. And so that's really useful where you've perhaps advertised your Zoom link and you want people to attend, you want the general public to attend, but you've read that FBI statement about Zoom bombing and you're worried that maybe someone might jump on in and be pornographic. Well, you've got a record of who they are and how they came in. So that's the registration process. With your meeting ID, when you have a Zoom account, you get a personal meeting ID, but I would never use it. So I would always use the generate automatically one, and you get a unique one each time. Requiring a meeting password is a new requirement from Zoom based on their recent security issues. I don't use the numbers. I tend to use some words that mean something because then people don't struggle with it. I like video on for both participants and hosts, but up to you what you would like to do there. The audio is pretty interesting. So see this telephone option? What it allows people to do is to attend your Zoom meeting if they don't have a computer, if they only have a phone. And so Zoom gives them a number that they can call. It is a US number by default, but you can get an Australian number as well. And so if you perhaps belong to an organization where there's a lot of older folk, or maybe you want your grandma to attend your family meeting and she doesn't have a computer, then you can use that telephone option and they can participate, but as an audio only attendee. For most of the meetings I do, I just use the computer audio, and that's what we're using today. Then some options for you. Will you let people join before you join as a host? I don't like to tick this one because I like to get ready before I allow participants in, and I let them all in at once through this waiting room. So they sit in the waiting room and then I say enable and they all open the floodgates and come on in. So I like that better because it feels a bit more controlled for me as a host. But if you're happy for, let's say it's 5 o'clock drinks with your team, then just enable join before host and people can just start to have a chat before you come on in. So Ali's asking where is that enable button? And so that's the third tick box here, the enable waiting room. That's the one I always have ticked. If this is a more serious meeting, you probably want to mute all your participants on entry so they can't get there and have a chatter beforehand. But usually I have that one unticked as well. Only authenticated users can join. That relates to the registration, so you can make sure only people who have registered can actually get in. And this one, if you know you want to have a recording, then tick that box because it's the number one thing everyone always forgets to do is to hit the record button when they're supposed to do it. So then if you say record the meeting automatically in the cloud, what will happen is Zoom will just start recording straight away as soon as you've started the meeting. And then after you've finished, it will process it and send you an email with a link to the video button, to the video. So people can just click it, you can share it with people, stick it in your Dropbox, upload it to YouTube, all sorts of things. So yeah, if you know that you're going to be a little bit forgetful around that, then definitely put the tick box on. Now the last one here always tricks people up. Probably you should just leave it blank. Alternative hosts are for when you have multiple people in your account. And so if you've got a company account and maybe 10 of your staff all have their own Zoom login, then you can add them in here and they can be co-hosts automatically with you. Most people don't have that kind of an account though, because you have to pay for every one of those users. It's just an extra amount per month. So if you're paying $20 a month, you then pay $40 a month for 2 people. So for that reason, you just ignore that part completely. Then you click save. And then something cool happens when you save is Zoom will then generate you a link. and you see this big long link has a question mark in it, that's called a password hash. So if you give someone that link, so if I copy and paste it, they will just automatically join without having to type in the password. Or over on the right-hand side, if you click the invite, it has this neat little section that you can just copy and then paste into an email. So you can see that topic appears there, the time's really clear in what time zone, and then it's got that big long link with the password hash and also the meeting ID and the password. So one last thing I wanted to show you that I really love about this is Zoom has these calendar items here. I always download the calendar item and add this webinar or this meeting into my digital calendar using those icons. And the reason is because I know the time zone is going to be correct and I know I don't have to retype the timing. So I just tick whichever calendar you use, click it and download it. And if I'm sharing this with someone else, I'll often attach that same file to the email I'm sending, and then I know they've got it as well. So I'm just going to turn off the share for a second and have a look through some of our questions because we've got quite a few here. And so Susan's asked, how can you stop the attendee chat appearing on the video for privacy reasons? I don't think you can do that. At least I've never done it before if you can. Considering Zoom's new security, there actually may be a way now. I'll look into that, Susan, and come back to you actually. How can we protect our IP, Noreen asked, or can our link be given to anyone? So there's sort of two answers here. When you get that big join URL with the password embedded in it, you can give that to anyone. So you can email it to them, you could publish it on socials, you could do whatever with it, and people just click it and join it. But ideally, you wouldn't do that. Usually what you do if you're worried about IP is you make people register and then they get their own link to the meeting and you don't have to disclose those things. So I would always do that way, is make people register if you're worried about protection. And Gina's asked, with the free version, what time does the 45-minute start? It's a really good question. It starts from the moment you click the start meeting button. So it doesn't start at, let's say you scheduled it to start at 1 p.m, but you don't actually start it to 1:05, then the 45 minutes starts from when you press that start button as the host when they start the meeting. So if you allow your attendees to come in through the waiting room, that doesn't add to the time, it's only from when you start. Ephraim's asked, what's the best practice for sharing the recording or the photos via platforms? That's a really good question. I would say if you want to share people's photos on socials, you should ask them always. And this is more important when you have your meeting in gallery view where you can see everyone's photos. I've actually been involved in a bit of an awkward situation last week where I attended a meeting. It wasn't really a secret meeting, but it was one where someone was deliberately excluded. And someone in that meeting took a screenshot and said, hey, this is a really great meeting, I really enjoyed it. And the excluded person saw it and went, oh, wow, yeah, I really miss you guys. So it definitely can lead to some awkward situations. So I would just ask, if you're going to take a photo or a screenshot, say to everyone, hey guys, is it okay if I share this on Facebook? I think it's been a really good meeting. And that's how you can get around the issues of people having people being uncomfortable with it. I have a question from Agatha, and she said that the password is required if people have joined without logging into Zoom as a registered user, and so the embed password won't be enough if the user actually isn't logged into Zoom at all. So that's really, really an extra security layer for you, that people have to be a registered user of Zoom to use that password link. So if they're brand new, they'll have to actually pop the password in. And so, Laurie, you didn't have to use the password because it was embedded in the link and you're a registered user. Now, I also have a couple of people who have their hand up, so let me just check that out. I think we've answered all of those other Q&A questions. Excellent. We're coming towards the end of our time now. So what I'm going to do is share my little summary for hosting a meeting. so you can see what we just went through. So number one, know your controls. And this is something that we have already talked about in detail. I showed you them on the screen. I think you should really test it out though, by having a 5 o'clock drinks or hosting a meeting with some mates and have a bit of a feel for how they work and practice with them all. And test your screen sharing. It's the biggest thing that people get stuck with, especially when you share a PowerPoint, because you have the PowerPoint, the working version and the actual slideshow version. And when you share the slideshow, like what I have just done here, it's really confusing because all of your Zoom controls disappear. So if you're going to have a PowerPoint, you should definitely test this out and get a feel for how it works. I think you should turn on the co-host feature. It's something that's in the advanced settings. It has to be turned on before you can use it. And the reason you should turn this on is because then you can have multiple people looking out for issues relating to microphones with background noise. Maybe there's some trouble and you need to kick people out. I have actually been in a meeting where that's happened. Or maybe there's some disrespectful chat going on, and so you want to remove those users. It's better that a co-host does that for you instead of you having to worry about doing that as a participant. And so a co-host gets almost all the same controls as a host does. So I would turn on that feature. And how you create a co-host is you click on that Manage Participants button, and there's just a little more button under that, and click Make Co-host. You should turn on breakout rooms if you're going to have large meetings. So it also is a feature that must be turned on before you can start using it. So remember to turn that on first. Practice with some friends and definitely practice how to mute noisy participants quickly on that Manage Participants window. Watch the chat. Some meetings will be much more vibrant than others in terms of the chat, especially if you've given people permission to jump on in there and actively ask lots of questions. And a big recommendation to you is that you have a run sheet that you can use just to go from top to bottom as to how the meeting's going to run. So Agata actually shared one with me that's a really good process. So I'm going to pop it in the chat here so that you can download. I'll put it into my Dropbox, so it's a heinously large link for you to copy. But that link actually downloads a PDF, and it's a version of someone else's run sheet, so you can have a look at. Agata got permission from the person who created it so that we could share it today. And it's a really good version of a run sheet to help you just keep all of your ducks in a row. Right, so now with the last of our time, I'm going to stop our share. And this is our open Q&A, which you've all been absolutely fantastic in asking questions the whole way through. So I'm going to try and tackle the ones that I haven't already seen here. So let's see. Any tips on hosting a panel discussion via Zoom? I am actually on a panel discussion tonight, and my best tip for you is to have a practice session. And so the practice session should be so people are used to muting and unmuting themselves when it's their turn to speak. And also try to discourage people from having PowerPoints. Otherwise, you're going to have all sorts of things jumping up and down in terms of sharing the screen, and it's really distracting. So that's my best tip for that one. Robin's going to use Zoom to run tax returns in the next season remotely, which is really cool and very innovative. Do we put in for screen share, and can they see our screen? So yes, how it works is you click the screen share button, you get a pop-up, and you can select what you want to share. My recommendation to you is that you share just the application you want them to see. Don't share your whole screen. And the reason is usually most people have things open that you just don't want people to see. Things like your email, you might have personal stuff on your desktop. So select just the thing you want them to see, not the first two options, which is your screen. And you don't have webcams or laptops, but that's okay. It would just be an audio meeting in that case. So you just need to have a good quality microphone, and it's much like a phone call, but you can record it. So really good for remote assistance as well as using the screen share feature. Muggy's asked if you hold a meeting that you record on your own, and then set out, are you able to edit the recording and insert PDFs or images? Yes, you absolutely can, but you must be able to edit a video, which lots of people have trouble with still. But if you're okay with it, then yes, you absolutely can edit it and add things in later. Well, we have lots of questions. This is fantastic. Agatha said that she's going to share the Word doc version of that PDF, so you can actually get in there and edit it. So that's really useful. Thank you so much, Agatha. Susan said every time she clicks on the external links in this chat, she's lost us, and she has to go back on the email to click on the link again. This is actually a little bit of a problem with using Zoom, especially if you only have one monitor. So in my case, I have two, so it makes managing that a little bit easier. When you lose someone on Zoom, what you want to do is look for the little blue icon. So that's on a PC, the blue icon that sits in your start bar. Click that and that will bring back up the meeting again, so you don't have to go all the way to your email and get back into it that way. So I would say that's probably the issue. There is a pro tip here. If you like keyboard shortcuts, I put my thumb on the Alt button and my forefinger on the Tab button, and I use this Alt tabbing sequence to move between the programs that I have open. And so if I ever lose Zoom, I just Alt tab to get it back. Now you can practice that, but don't practice it right now. But it's really a very, very useful shortcut, not just for Zoom. Ali's about to use Zoom for a youth employment meeting tonight. And is it okay to say that she's going to be muting people throughout the session because it's a webinar and not a chat? Yes, absolutely. And I would recommend, this run sheet has much the same information, is you have a housekeeping section at the beginning of that meeting. And that housekeeping session should say things like, it's okay if people use the chat today, we're going to be muting all participants, we would prefer if the video is on, and whatever else you would like. I go to a session which is online training, and they require everyone have their video on so that they can be certain that people have actually got their professional points by being in attendance, and they haven't just turned the Zoom on and gone to make dinner. So yeah, you set up that housekeeping at the beginning. Lots of thank yous. Someone's asked me, Ephraim's asked me to clarify the restriction for registration options again. So, okay, let me just start by saying how this came about. So this came about because people were creating a Zoom meeting, and then the website address they were putting out on social media, and it was publicly available. And that means that anybody could just click on it and join it. And this meant that people were doing naughty things. What we heard mostly was that they were sharing pornography, and it was called Zoom bombing. So they were jumping into a meeting that they weren't supposed to be doing naughty things at and doing those things. And so registration means that the link that people get is not a public link, it's a private link, and only someone who is registered to attend can actually use that link. Even if they share it with someone else, only one person can use it. So it removes that, that issue of when you share the link, what you would actually share now is your registration, register to attend this meeting, and you would share that registration link, and then you're not going to get, well, you're less likely to get Zoom bombers in it. It just gives you that extra layer of security. Thank you, Sandra. On a Mac, it is Control and Tab, not Alt Tab, sorry, Command and Tab. That's a funny Mac key that PC people don't get. From Kasha, she said that 45 minutes times out and kicks you out, and can you go back to the same link and restart another 45 minutes? The answer is sort of. If you selected generate automatically, then you can't use the same link. If you selected use your personal meeting ID, which I don't actually know if you can get them on the free plan anymore, but you used to be able to, then you can just go back and restart. In fact, I've seen lots of people do that, is they actually hold a 40-minute meeting and they say, here's the first half of the meeting, here's the second half, and they have a little comfort break in the middle and get people to go have a cup of tea or something else like that. Now we have tons and tons of questions that I haven't got to already, but in fact we are at our time. So I'm going to have to cut it there. And what I will do is I will save the chat and have a look through to see if there's anything that I haven't answered today. If you would like to go into this in a bit more detail, the ASPAS program is definitely available to do more advanced things. So we could maybe run another webinar or a classroom. Just get in touch with Agatha and let her know your interest in that. Or if you'd like to practice with this one-on-one with me, you could always book me for a consultation and then I can walk you through it. Recently, I helped a home consultant out. She does interior decorating, and she now uses Zoom to get people to walk around the house with their phone, and she gets to see what the spaces look like, and she can still do interior decorating without actually visiting there and doing it completely contactless. So it definitely has a lot of scope to how you can use it. Thank you so much for attending today. I look forward to seeing you at another webinar in the future. Have a great day.